China dropped a bombshell this week. Well, not the Chinese government, but Deepseek is the newest, hottest AI. It is taking the world by storm. ChatGPT in shambles. Grok, what does this mean for all of that? And what the heck is Deepseek? Well, I'm joined by John, Dr. Know-It-All himself, the man, the myth, the legend. Of course he is. He's all of those things and so much more, which we will get into. I'm Brian. Welcome to Future Oza.
Thank you. I'm definitely old. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Just turned old. I just turned officially old.
I made a joke in rehearsal yesterday. You see, I am going to be in a play coming up next month. And there's a scene where we're all supposed to just kind of grumble, but the director wants us to use real words. So I said, heavens to Murgatroyd. And that distracted some. So I'll find something else to say. Okay. Deepseek, let's start easy. In one word, how do we describe Deepseek?
Oh, I've got a great word. You've never heard this one before. Disruptive.
It is absolutely, that is the only word I can think of. Something comes out that's, the example I saw was if the iPhone came out at $1,000 and 6 months later there was a Chinese knockoff that cost $30.
Yeah.
What do you even do?
Yeah. What do you do? And
so what is Deepseek and why does it matter?
Well, okay. So first of all, if you don't mind leaving a link, I have a very deep description of the paper in that I did. It's a 50-minute video. So obviously we will not want to talk in that depth. I just mentioned this as a preface because so many people have so much information wrong about what these guys did. So first of all, we got to dial it back to December when nobody was paying attention to them and they released their V3 model, which was essentially a distillation of ChatGPT 4.001, something like that. Andre Karpathy at the time, I remember he was like, hey, this is a cool thing. And everyone was like, eh. And then what they did was they built on top of that. They built reinforcement learning framework, which is the real breakthrough for this. And people are saying there's no breakthrough with R1. I'm like, no, you are absolutely incorrect about that. V3 was what they used as a starting gate. They used that model, which was already was trained. It was a good model. And then they let it just play itself. And it just played itself and it played itself and it played itself. And that's the breakthrough. Same thing that chess programs that way back or chess or take Go, for example, you had DeepMind, and people have got these facts wrong too. There's so many popular YouTubers who are just getting all these facts wrong. The program that beat Lee Sedol back in 2015 or 2016, whatever that date was, that was actually the original version. That was Alpha Go. That was the version that they had mostly trained on human-based games, and it had done some reinforcement learning, and that beat Lee Sedol. Then what they did was they turned around and created Alpha Zero, and you'll note that there's a R10 with a very distinct reference back to this. And the whole point of that was DeepMind said, screw all of this human information. We have a model that works pretty well. We're just going to there's the black and the white, and they're going to play each other billions of times. And they just let it go. And it, within, I think it was just the space of a couple of months, destroyed the version that beat Lee Sedol. So it was like they worked hard for years to create this finely crafted version that would beat the best Go player in the world. And then within a few months, this self-playing version just wiped everything off the floor. Now, that's what they did. That's really easy to do with a game. Because a game is a game. It's like you win, you lose. It's, it's relatively easier to measure that. But how do you do that in reality? Reality is really big. So how do you handle something like that? Well, we didn't know for a long time, but now all of a sudden we know. And the suspicion is that, that OpenAI and Anthropic and other companies have been doing this behind the scenes. And that's why we had people like, Ilya, the big meme about what Ilya saw. And that was over a year ago now, where he was like, holy crap, I'm going to go form this company called Safe Superintelligence. Forget about OpenAI. We're going straight for it. That they realized that they now had a way to do pure reinforcement learning just to have these models play themselves in reality. Or linguistic reality. So anyway, sure. So that's the really, really key part of R1. And there was an R10, which was a pure play. They just took the V3 model and they said, go play yourself. And it did this, and it got really a lot better. And then R1 is a much more complicated pipeline where they made it more human friendly. So it would spit out answers, because this is one of the most amazing things from their paper, is that the R10 version, which is the pure play reinforcement learning without any guardrails. They just said, go do it. It is primarily trained on English and Chinese text, and it started mixing the two languages in its reasoning. And they got rid of that in R1 because they said it was discomforting for human users to see the thoughts going back and forth from Chinese. And I'm like, no, this is actually the beginnings of what we're going to see, is that these AIs, these reasoning AIs, are going to they're going to reason in a way that humans will not even be able to understand, and it won't take them long. If you let them go at this, they'll create a new language that'll be this much more efficient language that allows them to reason, that will look like some sort of mixture of a bunch of languages or numbers, or who the hell knows what it's going to look like, but it will eventually reason in a way that we're just like, we're too stupid to even understand what the hell it's doing. And
So
that is fascinating.
that sounds like
Yeah,
the code from the Matrix, quite literally.
it does.
Uh, and what you've got
And I
is,
realized, hold on a second, I'm not me. I was in disguise. Halfway through this video,
there he
yes,
is.
I'm here. I'm here. It's actually Dr. Know-it-all.
Clark, you're back.
Exactly. I'm opposite.
Now, when Superman's already the opposite, because Superman is his real identity and Clark Kent is his alter
so there
ego.
we go. Oh, so
that is
works.
the difference.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, the trick with it is, as you know, I'm sure you've studied some languages where you've noticed that English is missing a word for this, or the other language doesn't have a phrase to describe this. It's taking those shortcuts and mixing to find the shortest path linguistically. And the real trick, well, of course we can solve self-driving. I mean, we can beat chess and Go, right? But those are games of rules, and the real world is full of exceptions.
Yeah.
You can make up a new word on the spot that people can still potentially understand.
Right.
So I've seen since then other organizations saying, well, we've got something that's actually going to leapfrog their AI. That's possible, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, this is what blows the doors off of things. Yeah. This blows the doors off of everything, and it moves my timeline for when we're going to get to AGI. The one big caveat is physicalized artificial intelligence, meaning four-wheeled or two-legged, or four-legged, I guess. But I don't know if you want to save that to talk about in a different, we can talk about that with full self-driving, but let's put that aside for a minute. Let's talk about the virtual world, which is mostly linguistically based, computer based, that kind of thing. The sky is the limit now. I mean, we're looking at something that is going to probably learn at such an accelerated rate that it's going to be difficult for us. We're going to have like just a bunch of 150, 170 IQ entities, sort of arbitrarily many. And then what they'll do is they'll create little baby models. And this is another thing from the paper, is that they distilled these models. And I've actually tested out Llama 70B, and the version of it that's been fine-tuned, or not distilled from the bigger version, basically taught by the bigger version how to reason, is way, way smarter than the base model 70B. And that's a relatively small model. That's Llama 70B. It's 70 billion parameters as opposed to 500 billion or a trillion or whatever. So it's a reasonably small model. And distilling that reasoning capability into this smaller model allowed that to become super smart. And then people have done it to even smaller ones, like 1-2 billion parameter models. So we're going to look at these incredibly smart things, which will then create these like little offsprings, all of these little babies that will be good at one thing. But that's fine. If you want a customer service phone agent, you don't need it to know everything about the philosophy of physics or something. It just has to be able to help you, right? So it'll create these little offsprings of these little agents, which will be everywhere running around. So we're just going to have these like insane swarms of artificial intelligence.
So China doesn't have access to some of the fastest chips out there, and they're still doing it. Are they doing it brute force? Are they doing it algorithmically with efficiencies that way? A combination? What's the solution there? And does the idea of limiting what chips they have access to even make sense in this world?
Okay, so this is really interesting. The likely answer is subterfuge. The likely answer is they had access to 50,000 H100s. Yes, we're supposed to have export controls, but no, it doesn't work. And you can have a company, arbitrarily, let's say Norway or something. I'm just not throwing Norway under the bus. I'm just saying you could say, and they could buy it and then they could resell it to China, right? So you could create these shell companies and easily get that. Dario Amodei just yesterday or today published an article about the fact that we still need these export controls. What he was saying was, he was like, look, you can do this let's call that $1 billion it costs to buy these things. He's like, yeah, you can do that, but we're going to need 10 times or 100 times more. And he's like, it's going to be really tough, especially with the export controls being tightened more, right? Because some of this probably slipped through earlier and everything. He's like, the more you tighten this and the bigger the ask is, the more billions of dollars you need to spend, the harder it is to sneak that in. And so he was like, we need to double down on this export control, because I am firmly in the camp of whoever gets to this thing first wins. Full stop. Nothing else to say.
Okay. Now, are you saying so? When you say first to get to this thing, is it AGI we're talking about?
I think AGI will lead to artificial superintelligence very rapidly after that, and that's the first to get to ASI wins. Because what are you going to do? You have the smartest entity, probably smarter than the rest of the planet, or at least on that level,
or at least scaling to it.
Yeah, scaling to it rapidly. And so, you don't want to lose that race. That this is like the one race. This is like the nuclear arms race, except potentially even worse.
More important.
Yeah,
that's a good point. As of today, as of commercially available products, what is AI very good at? I'd say music generation has gotten very good.
Yeah.
I'd say coming up with idea lists is pretty good. But what are some things that it's actually definitely good at? We've seen Watson using reading medical charts in conjunction with doctors to high efficacy. What is it good at today?
I think it might be more of a question of what isn't it good at anymore. Again, physicality on top of everything else. But it's got the physicality, of course, it's not good at yet, but that is something that's coming because the data is not as incoming for robots, right? So that'll come. That's going to be delayed by a year or two just because physical robots are hard to build. So anyway, so taking that away again, just using that as a caveat, it's not good at extremely guardrailed type of interactions. And I know this from experience, including today, that if you want it to behave exactly the same way over and over and over again, like a lot of businesses want, it's not good at that. Because it's a non-deterministic model. The whole point of it is it's supposed to be creative and come up with creative answers. So it's kind of like trying to put a square peg in a round hole kind of thing to try to make it deterministic. So anyway, that's something that is not particularly good at. It is not good at long form anything at this point. It can make very, very short little videos. Can't possibly make a movie at this point, not even a 5-minute movie that would have any coherence whatsoever, narratively and video wise. It can't write a book. It falls apart. Can write a short story now, which is amazing. It couldn't do that a couple of versions ago. Couldn't write a good short story. Now it can write a good short story. So, it's improving in that. And then there was one other thing, but anyway,
it can't tell jokes.
Yeah. It can find ones in its arsenal and repeat
but
them.
When you say, give me a joke about this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's like asking a 4-year-old to generate a fresh joke. At least theirs are funny. These are just like, what?
Yeah.
Once it solves humor, man, they'll be on the ball like Sheryl Crow. See, that's a joke I made up and have never used before.
There
I'm
you go.
Proud of it.
Yeah, there you go.
So what
honestly,
are we doing with?
I think we should stop on humor. Because this is something that I actually talked about years ago, back when these things were just babies. It's not that long ago now. But I said, when it solves humor, that is proof of a number of things. Number one, it has to have a sense of self versus other, because humor is always about, in a sense, being mean to somebody else. What's the old line? Like, if I slip on a banana peel, it's a tragedy. If you do, it's a comedy. I mean, that sense of like otherness and knowing two entities, not only yourself, but somebody else. And also the creativity to understand what would make an audience, somebody that you're talking to or chatting with, laugh. Those are very challenging. You have to have a sense of self. You have to have a sense of other. You have to have a projected sense of what the effect on the other will be. Those are hard. And I think that actually brings us close to the level of what we would call a conscious entity. So I think that's actually really important. Humor is not just a throwaway thing. It's actually incredibly important for looking at, is this a conscious entity or not?
Mm-hmm. I love it. Guys, tomorrow we're going to come back with another discussion. We're going to be talking about FSD, all the things we've learned, and not just about Tesla, but the other companies aspiring to the same heights. We shall find out what doctor knows all of it about.
We'll talk about those 4-wheeled robots. Heck yeah.
Those 4 who-wheeled robots, and maybe the other 2-legged ones as well. We shall see if he is Dr. Know-It some or all. Tune in to find out, guys. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Come to Chattanooga in March.
Yeah.
John's going to be there. I'll be there. Link in the description to the video he was talking about earlier in the show. And yeah, like, subscribe, do the usual. You know what you're doing. Stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots in the singularity.